Also, we're live. Showtime! Today I'm so honored. I have with me Steve Stine from Guitar Zoom and Steve Stine's Guitar Lessons. I'm super honored. I'm a subscriber of you. Quick anecdote, we've met at NAMM at the MMG booth. But you must have met so many people over there.
I do, yes.
And I have a... Let me share my screen. I was watching one of your video a couple of weeks ago, and boom, I'm part of that video at one point. So that was kind of funny, to discover I was in one of your videos. Thank you very much to be part of my humble show.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Glad to be here.
So everything's fine on your side?
Yeah, as far as the audio and everything?
Yeah, and also, how are you feeling? You're good?
Oh, yeah, we... just like everybody else, it gets a little, you get a little tired of being home. The good news is we've been able to do some, like my family now, we play a lot of cards and board games and things like that, where it seems like we weren't really doing much of that. So that's been the benefit, but getting a little tired of sitting at home.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I bet so. I've seen you've been very active on your channel. Many videos, many live shows. I was not able to watch most of them. On my side, I keep working. I have a day job, a normal day job. And I'm doing teleworking right now. But I'll catch up eventually.
Oh, sure. Well, and I've got a bunch of collaboration videos, too, that are... There's probably 14 videos in the making of collaboration videos from other musicians all around the world, but I'm still waiting for some of the pieces to come in, and of course, those require a lot of audio and video editing. So, but there's so it's not just the stuff you've already seen. There's all kinds of stuff that nobody has seen yet too that is in the process as well, which is fun.
One thing I must confess before we start, I'm a huge fan of Paul Gilbert.
Oh, yeah.
And I was able to learn the intro to Green Tinted 60s Mind because of you. And I was
awesome.
like, wow, I can't play. I was like, thank you very much.
Absolutely, that's great. Well, that's awesome.
Okay, so someone... Yeah, where's the echo coming from? Okay, let me try something. I'll switch my mic. Okay. Sorry, guys. Thank you very much. How is it, guys? How's my viewers hearing right now? I still have an echo. Okay. It's all right. Boy.
Let's see. Mine doesn't. That doesn't help you if I turn that off, does it?
Let's try. Do you hear me right now?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
But I haven't heard any echo from you on my end of things.
Okay. So right now there's no echo. Can someone from the viewers tell me if we have an echo? Yes or no? And then we'll start. Sorry, Steve.
Oh, no worries.
the fun to be
that way you know for future what settings to use. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, it's still echoing. Someone is saying, but okay, we'll move on. We'll jump right now. Okay, perfect. Good. Thank you very much. yes. Let's jump. Steve, we're about the same age. We won't say what age we are right now. But I think you started and you know about guitar for the practicing musician.
Oh yeah. I used to collect all those magazines. I actually have bins of those magazines out in my garage. There's probably 10 bins of 1,000 magazines between Guitar World, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, Guitar Player magazine, all of those. Yeah.
Okay, well, I have the same, but when I move into my house, I threw everything away at one point. I have too many boxes. But let's just how Steve started. How did you start on the guitar? What reason you brought you to the instrument?
Well, really, I think it all started back when I was probably like 8 years old, and I was at my cousin's house. And, I grew up in a family that listened to, my mom and dad both listened to a lot of music. Nobody played instruments, but you know, when I was growing up, my mom listened to a lot of like doo-wop and 50s music, things like that. My dad listened to a lot of 60s and 70s, a lot of Alice Cooper and Led Zeppelin and all that kind of stuff. And then I got turned on to Kiss when I was about 8 years old. And yeah, and Ace Frehley is what I wanted to grow up and be. So it all started right there. I just totally wanted to play guitar after hearing. It was Love Gun was the first album that I had heard by Kiss, and that was it. And that's what I wanted to do.
What was your first guitar?
My first guitar was a Hondo. If you remember Hondo, it was a Hondo. It was a Les Paul copy, and it was red, and it was I don't have it anymore, and I wish I still did, but that was my very first electric guitar. My parents bought it for me when I was 13.
Okay, nice.
And it just went through a series of crappy guitars up until I was about 18. I got my first Ibanez Gem, and that's where my whole love for Ibanez Gem started.
You still have it?
The first Ibanez Gem I got?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Nice. My first guitar was a Vintage. You remember that brand of guitar?
I do, yes.
One and it had only one pickup. That was super important to have only one pickup, like all, Van Halen and all the shredders from back then. So remember what first song you learned?
Well, no, not really, but I do remember when I first got my guitar, my parents got me in some guitar lessons, and one of the first songs that my teacher tried to teach me was Dust in the Wind, and I didn't know anything about chords, and I thought, man, I can't play this. I can't play this. I got to quit. I sucked. I never start my beginners playing Dust in the Wind. There are far easier songs to learn how to play. But so I quit taking guitar lessons, and then I learned how to play mostly by ear after that. And so, one of the first songs I learned how to play was Looks That Kill by Motley Crue by watching a buddy of mine who played guitar. And, there's a whole story behind all that. I didn't understand anything about how guitar worked, anything about theory, anything about logic. I just could watch people play and see what they were doing and figure out what they were doing. So,
cool. Yeah, what we didn't... back then at YouTube, we had to rely on magazines or VHS tape, whatever.
Well, that's the thing is, like, back when I was, this is just a little story, but back when I was like, I must have been like 9 or 10 years old, my uncle gave me an acoustic guitar, and I was living out in this little town in Minnesota, and there was nobody around to teach me, and all I had was this Mel Bay book, if you remember the Mel Bay method books, right? So I was learning how to play like G and C and whatever, and they'd show you how to read some notes, and none of it made any sense in my head because that's all I knew about music, and it didn't sound like, Aerosmith or any of the bands I listened to just strumming on this G chord. And I remember watching a video of Ted Nugent on TV. He was playing for something, and he's up here doing all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm strumming this G, and I could see him doing all these things, and there was no connection whatsoever in my head between what I was doing and what he was doing. And I think that's kind of where my love of teaching began was, once you've been playing for a while, there's so many experiences you've had, so many thought processes you've had to get you to where you are. When you're a beginner, none of it makes sense. Like, nothing makes sense. So, getting from learning how to play my first G chord, and I did wind up quitting until I was 13. That's when I got my electric. And so making that connection between, a G chord is completely non-related to this scale that's being played, and putting all that together kind of sent me on my way to becoming a teacher.
Awesome. What was your first amp? You remember?
I think it was my dad bought me this 212 Yamaha solid state, but I don't remember what model it was, but it was this awful old amp, and the distortion was terrible on it, and I had this awful fuzz pedal, and I didn't know anything about gear, not that I know a lot about gear today either, but I really didn't know anything about gear, and it sounded awful, but it was really loud. So I remember my dad taking me out to my grandparents' house. I lived on a farm, and we got to plug it in this barn, and I scared all the cows away. It was so loud. It was the first time I got to turn it up really loud. But I don't remember what model it was.
Okay. Well, I had a very small trainer amp with a bus heavy metal pedal.
Oh, nice.
I wish I still had that pedal. They're worth a fortune now, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
What was your first pedal or first effect?
Well, I know I had a phaser pedal. That was one of the first ones I had, but I don't remember what brand it was. They were all off-brand. Like when I first started playing, I grew up. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and so my dad found that he could really encourage me to play by buying me little things here and there. So he would buy me a phaser pedal or a flanger pedal, or he didn't know what any of these things were. And but none of them were like reputable, like a Boss pedal or something like that. They were always some strange little off-brand, I'm sure, and which probably are worth money today too. Who knows? But I know I had a flanger pedal that he got me right away, and then my distortion pedal again. I don't remember what it was. I don't know how old you are. I'm 49 and I can barely remember those years.
Sorry, I was off screen, but I was still here.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm 50. I'm not too worried to say it, so we're close, I think.
Yeah. I'm 49, and those early days, my life has been, up until just a few years ago, my life has been about 150 miles an hour. So there's a lot of things in there that and back in the day, I never studied, and not that I do really anymore either, but I never really kept up on gear. I just had what I had. And up until just a few years ago, I even really didn't have that many guitars and things like that. I just played what I had and made do with it, and that's kind of the simplicity of gear for me.
Same on my side, and I even quit in the mid-90s. New full job kids. You stop being like a young guy, and now you've got responsibilities and everything. And the huge background behind your gear is something that I collected over the past 10 years.
Sure.
So, and it's more for fun, and then also I can afford it. So it's kind of
right.
And as I said in a previous interview, I've been through a lot, with selling gear or stuff like that. So at one point I said I buy stuff that will keep.
Yeah,
so
right.
This is why behind me I have so many amps and cabs and pedals. I'm a simple guy when I approach my gear when I'm playing. An amp, a guitar. Maybe a reverb or a delay, and I'm quite happy with this.
Right. Yeah, when I would have been 17 or 18 before I went to college, I actually bought that Ibanez Gem with financial aid money that I got to go to college. And, and then I went to college, and then I started teaching, and teaching blew up, and then I played in a bunch of bands. So I spent my 20s and my 30s playing in tons of different bands in a couple of different states, and teaching guitar. I was a professor at a college here in Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
I became a Montessori instructor. I was a Montessori teacher, if you know what Montessori education is. So I was always really busy, and the gear, I never really needed 17 guitars. I just played what I played, for my bands and for lessons and things like that. And same with amps. I mean, I've had friends that are, that own tons of gear, and for me, it was always just whatever worked. I mean, if I needed a guitar that was tuned down a half step, or I needed a guitar that was whatever, these, of course, locking tuning, so that's the way up until about 10 years ago, it was right around when I was 40 that this online thing blew up, and I started doing this, and I still play in bands here and there, but I really made a commitment because I was just the opposite. Like, I had a wife and kids, but I was never around. Like, I was never home. I was always playing or traveling with the bands or teaching. Up until about 10 years ago, I made the commitment that I was going to shut down and start enjoying my life a little bit with my family, and this is where I am now. So,
and you made it great. Your channel is awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I've been blessed in multiple ways, and so now I really value my time when I'm not on screen, or with my family and things like that, doing stuff with them. And even when I do travel, oftentimes I wind up bringing either one of my kids or my wife or somebody will go with me. Like at NAMM, I had my wife with me. So
cool. I had my son.
Oh, nice.
My son was with me. He's a drummer.
Oh, okay.
So he wanted to be part of that show. So I said, come with me.
That's awesome.
I have one of my, I would say fan. He's at all my shows.
Awesome.
See.
Well, that's nice of you. Thank you.
So let's go back to your early influences. You said Kiss and everything. Was Ace Frehley or someone else that?
Oh gosh, there were lots. I mean, but before I started playing, there was Kansas and Styx and Rush and Ted Nugent and Aerosmith and Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix and all those players. When I started playing, it was really like, Angus Young, Iron Maiden, Ozzy, Randy Rhoads stuff, Judas Priest. Like, those were the bands I was into when I started playing guitar, and so those are really a lot of the players that I studied at that time. Not that I didn't play, Aerosmith and things like that, because of course I did, but the weird thing, and this is going to sound really weird, but Kiss was off limits to me to learn on the guitar, because I never wanted to demystify the love that I had for that band. So I never learned Kiss music ever when I was a kid. I just wanted... Because the weird thing for me about music is, I remember one of my professors in college saying, I'm just paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, on your journey to becoming a true musician, you have to learn how to enjoy music again, instead of just analyzing everything. I've always been an analyzer, so I can't sit and listen to music when I go to bed or something, because I can't shut my brain off. So for me, Kiss was never that bad. Like, I always just wanted to enjoy it. And I never learned Kiss stuff up until... probably in my 20s or something like that, later 20s, that I started learning Kiss. And then I actually had a couple of Kiss tribute bands and things like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With all the makeup?
No, never that. But just, I've always loved playing music, whether it's original music, whether it's cover music, things like that. But I've never been the kind of player that tries to emulate other people's music. I just play. So if it's a Kiss tune and it's an Ace Frehley solo, sure, I might borrow some things here and there from the solo, but most of the time I just play it however the heck I'm going to play it, with whatever guitar tone I've got on at the time. That's kind of how I've always approached things. So, but I love playing with other musicians, and I love playing with friends, and love performing and things like that. And but I've just always kind of done it in my own way. But anyway, so I didn't really learn Kiss stuff when I was younger. I learned all this other stuff. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I played in one original band at one point. That was cool. But I'm like you. I like original covers, whatever. And I even did a tribute. We were doing Rage Against the Machine. That was a challenge.
Right.
I broke a couple of kill switch.
I bet. Yeah, for me the point is when you're performing is however you need to do it, in whatever capacity you're doing your thing, because I've done all kinds of different things. But for me, it's about enjoying myself and allowing people to enjoy what I'm doing. So, when you're performing, the energy is the key. Like, I love to give energy, and I love to get energy. And so, playing on stage is headbanging and running around and doing the whole thing. I love all that kind of stuff, for sure.
And it shows in your videos that you make on YouTube.
Yeah.
You're there, you feel great, it's fun. We want to watch those videos.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it.
Did you stop at one point? Did you took a break?
Never. I've never stopped playing. I just, the thing I was thinking about, because I'm always thinking about content, like creating content for people that might help them in learning how to play or learning how to think about playing. And one thing I was thinking about last night was how, since this whole COVID-19 thing hit, and I've been so busy making, content videos of theory, or like all these, and behind the scenes, all these collaboration videos I've been doing have been really consuming my time. So what I haven't had a lot of time to do is practice my rudimentary stuff, because I've been doing all this other stuff. And, I play a few hours every day for sure. But what's so funny is it just seems like there's never enough time to do it all. Like if you're in a Rage Against the Machine cover band and you're playing in 3 other bands, chances are you're spending most of your time trying to hone up on the skills of whatever it is you're studying. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then there's other players out there that don't play in a band and they sit at home and they practice their scales or licks or whatever it might be. Or maybe you play metal music and you never play blues, or you play blues and you never play metal. And for me, I'm all over the place, man. I'm playing blues, and then I'm playing metal, and then I'm playing this, and I'm playing... So I've learned not to dog myself. Like, I don't get down on myself. I just go with wherever I'm at. Like, if I'm... Like, right now, I'm making all these collaboration videos, and again, I am blessed to even be able to do this. So the fact that I haven't had a lot of personal practice time, I'm cool with it. Like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have been beating myself up because I'm not getting enough whatever. Now I'm cool with whatever. I'm just glad to be playing and still breathing. So,
do you have a practice routine when you pick up your guitar, or just play or go through a song?
Well, it depends. If I've I've got a band that we play all this Metallica stuff, and it's all really Damage Incorporated and Master of Puppets and Creeping Death, and all the really heavy fast stuff. And so that requires some more technical ability than, some of the other stuff that I might do. Just whatever. But so when I need to be there, there's certain rudimentary things that I'll do. But most of the time, what I do when I grab a guitar first thing in the morning is I just practice a lot of legato stuff to kind of get things warmed up. And then I'll start doing some, Paul Gilbert-ish 3-note for string pattern stuff, things like that. And then, maybe I've got 1 or 2 particular kinds of riffs or licks or patterns or sequences that I'm working on. But for me, I let the staccato, I let the alternate picking in the legato world kind of mesh. I'm not worried about whether every note is always picked. You look at, like, there's some amazing players out there. If you know who Nick Johnston is, or if you know who Michael Doce is, or even I know Scott Gaylor's going to be on your show.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, there's a lot of great players out there that do a mixture of picking and legato stuff and things like that. And that's where I live is I just let it kind of happen. Whatever happens, happens. And sometimes I want to pick more, and sometimes I want to do more legato work, things like that. Rick Graham is another guy, an amazing picker, but he's got great legato skills. Mateus Asado, if you know who Mateus is.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yep.
We have Christopher here. What's Steve's next project?
Ooh, well, I'm working on a couple of different things. I'm actually working on a techniques course, which I was full on in before the COVID-19 thing hit, and I did the blues thing. But it requires me to practice a lot, too, to keep the level up for that. So I've got that coming, and then I've got another modes course coming, too, where I'm going to look at modes from 3 different perspectives. From a relative mode, and from kind of a parallel mode idea, and then more of a chordal theory perspective of looking at modes. Just because, again, everybody looks at all these things differently, and so I'm always trying to think, well, there are many different ways to look at the same idea, and so if I can throw out different ways of looking at it, maybe that will help people in a different way too.
Good. And we have a good comment from John here.
Oh, well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
Cool. What's your favorite piece of gear right now?
Right now, to be completely honest with you, one of my favorite pieces of gear is my Kemper. I have a Hughes and Kettner. I have a Black Spirit that I use. Sorry, I got to fix my cable here. I've got a Black Spirit that I use for a lot of my recordings, but when I was younger, again, I was very one-dimensional. Whatever amp I had is what I used for everything that I would do, right? But who doesn't want a Fender Twin or a Blackface, right? Or an old Marshall Plexi or something like that. And I've never been able to afford those things. And even if I could, I don't have any room for them. And what am I going to do with all these amps? So I've never been an avid amp collector. I just have what I have. And with the Kemper, I can get closer to those sounds and a variety of different things without having to go out and buy all these amps. And it's just been a lot of fun for for making videos and things like that, and for performing and things like that. It's been really, really fun. Sometimes like this, like right now, I've got this kind of Dr. Z tone, which is almost like a Fender Twin-ish, which is just really inspiring to me. And then I can go right from there to a 5150 or something like that. And what I found with them is, it's not perfect. It's, I don't know that it'll ever be, better than a tube amp or something like that. But for a person that's looking for a lot of different sounds and things like that, I think it's amazing. And what I love to do is I mix a little bit of the studio sound along with a cab, and that's kind of the ideal tone that I get. And so that's by far one of the most fun things I've bought in a long time, just because it's very inspiring to me.
Good. And have you ever played a Boss Katana?
Actually, I have a Katana upstairs in my living room that I used to jam with. The thing is for me, is because I am kind of obsessive compulsive. Whenever I get stuff, everything requires a learning curve, and whether it's software or a recording software or a video editing software or streaming software or whatever. It could be anything. They require your time. They require you to learn about them. And what I have learned is, because of my who I am, I get kind of crazy with how much I go into it. So with the Katana, what I've done is the tones that I've dialed in just basically is as far as I've went. I have the software, and I looked at the software and went, I'm not ready to dive in that deep yet. So,
Understood.
But it's very easy to dial in a really great guitar. I got a great lead tone sitting upstairs that I use for my jamming.
Yeah, impressive amps for the price.
Yeah. God, they're wonderful. Yeah.
I remember when I tried the Katana the first time. I was on the Gear Page forum. Everybody was raving about. I went to the store. Played it 10 minutes. I was like, wow, all of this in this small lunchbox, I left the store with it. And as I told you, I created that Facebook group.
Yep.
About 3 years and a half ago. I was expecting like 50 to 100 members back then. I said, maybe if we reach 500, this is going to be a nice group. And we're close to 13,000 members right now. It's like crazy,
That's awesome.
Did you? I'm just curious. Did you ever have a Line 6 pod back in the days?
I had a Line 6 pod, and I actually, for the longest time, used to travel with a Line 6 Spider Valve Mark II, which was the one with the Bogner.
Okay.
That's what I used to travel with, and people. I mean, so many of these things are, whether it's Kemper or Boss or Line 6, they're, you love them or hate them, right? People just, for me, what I have found is you can dial in just about, and again, I mean, especially in 2020, but you can dial in just about anything to sound good if you give it a little time, and it's within your ballpark. If I'm a rock guy, so I like distortion, right? So if I have an amp that does, So if I have an amp that has no distortion, obviously I'm going to need to have a pedal or something to drive it a little bit. But other than that, I think you can dial in just about anything. Like the Katana's a prime example. How I'm sure it's an amazing amp. I just haven't gone that deep. Once I got the Kemper, I really started trying to figure out, because the whole thing for me is when I'm doing my recordings, like what we're doing right now, and all the videos I make. Inspiration, when I'm inspired to do something, I don't want to sit and dial in a microphone and tweak this and change the levels of this. I just want to turn on my stuff and I want to start doing my thing. And that's inspiring to me. And so, 20 years ago, we couldn't do that very well. Now, you can do that very simply with the gear that's out there. You just have to find something that works best for, it makes sense to you. When you look at it and you start dialing it in, you go, okay, well, that makes sense. It sounds great.
Yeah, we live in a very great time right now to be musicians.
We do. You're right.
Yeah. Someone here is asking Any recommendation for Kemper profile?
Sure. There's a number of really good ones that are free, but if you want my opinion on companies that make paid stuff, if you're looking for something from the clean to crunch classic tones, for me, Tone Junkie is incredible. Their tones they do a wonderful job. They're easy to tweak. They've got great effects, things that they've already kind of dialed in for different profiles. For me, honestly, the Kemper's the same way. I don't go in there and tweak stuff. I just want to dial in. I want to pull up a sound and go, hey, that's good. I need a little more high end because I'm losing my hearing, so I need a little more whatever. And I'm done. And that's the way my life is very simple for that. So Tone Junkie is great. If you're looking for something a little bit heavier, I would definitely look at something like Tone Crate. I love Tone Crate stuff. There's a couple other ones, but those are really good ones. The Michael Britt stuff is really great for more clean and crunchy stuff. I know Michael's been working with Tone Junkie lately, and they've been doing stuff. But the Chop Tones is another one for heavier tones. I think is great. So anyway,
so as we are all gear lovers, anything you're listening for right now, dreaming of, or whatever.
No, I'm good with what I got, to be honest.
Wow, great.
Yeah, I've never had that thing where I go into a guitar store or whatever and I'm like, oh my God, and I shouldn't say I've never done that. I mean, there was a time when I most certainly did that. But, I've got a number of different Ibanez gems and some different Paul Reed Smiths and Floyd Rose is a friend of mine. I've got one of Floyd's guitars and
I had the purple one.
Yeah.
That looks nice.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun to play. I've got a couple of acoustics. I guess I wouldn't mind having maybe a 12-string or something like that. But I'm good.
Sure.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
I always have something I want, but. That's the way I am.
The older I get, the more simple I want everything. Like when I go to a rehearsal or I go to a performance, I've got a pedal board that probably weighs 30 pounds. It probably weighs more than that. And I'm a little guy. I'm 5'2", And so for me to carry all this stuff around, especially as I get older, I just want simple. And so if I can bring out, my Black Spirit has got a pedal that comes with it. My Kemper has got the floorboard that comes with it. And I'm done. And so I'm not, looking for this pedal or whatever. I'm cool with what I have.
I am with you. I haven't gig as much as you did, but when I used to gig, my rig was quite simple. I really when you set up in 5 minutes, you get out of the stage in 5 minutes, and when you do those, not too cool venue when you finish at 3 a.m. in the morning and you have to pack everything.
Well, I was going to say, when I was younger, my attitude wasn't the same as it is now. Like, I used to run a Marshall JVM, and then I had a full rack system. I had 2 412s. It would take me longer to set my stuff up than it took the drummer to set his stuff up. But what I'm saying is now I would never go back to that. And you're right. You'd get done playing at 1:30 in the morning, and it would take you till 2:30, 3 o'clock to tear down your stuff. I want out in 5 minutes. That's what I want.
Yeah. You don't want to have a van to carry all your gear. Yeah, show. Thank you. And we have here John from. He's asking what recommendation for gear software. Let's go and I have my version of this.
Sure. Well, if you're brand new to home recording, what I would say is the cheaper the better. Now, once you get into it, you can do whatever you want, but you want to try and make it easy because it's very easy. Again, if you have my kind of thought process, it's very easy to get crazy and you read all the manuals and you're completely lost. So what I always recommend for people is you could start with something like Reaper. Like Kukos Reaper.
Same.
There you go. So it's free to begin with. You don't have to do all the crazy stuff. You can literally drag and drop a file, start recording. It's very easy to do. What you do need to do, of course, is you need to be able to plug into something that goes into Reaper or whatever, recording software you'd want. And that's where you need what's called an audio interface. And you could buy audio interfaces for $50 to $100 that only have one or two inputs, and that's fine. That's enough to get you started. And then you need some way of getting the guitar to sound good, whether it's something on this side, that's going into your audio interface, or it's something software based that's on the other side. And there's lots of different ways you can do it. Like right now, if I run my Kemper, I'm running it into my audio interface, and then that just goes into Reaper. But there are times that I might use what's called a VST, right? An amp simulator. So I could use something like there's a product called Amplitude, or I use a lot of stuff from a company called Positive Grid. I think they make really good stuff. But there's a whole host of things out there, and a lot of them offer you like a free version where you get a few different amps to start with.
And you can get a decent mic for a cheap price these days and start with this and experiment.
Yeah, there's lots of really great ways. You could even buy, like they sell, if you buy an audio interface, oftentimes it'll come bundled with some sort of recording software right in it, and then you can download. I know, if you know who Fluff is, Fluff just had a demo. It's through, oh gosh, I can't remember the company. ML Sound, ML Labs, something like that. But you can buy it for $60 or $70 or whatever. But it comes with a really great sounding single amp, and you could download that and just use the one amp just to get started, to get some cool tones. There's lots of ways to do it and not have to spend a lot of money.
And I would say a Boss Katana makes a great audio interface for a starter.
That's
someone has the amp, they can use it. But
so with the Katana, can you then run USB into your computer and bypass the audio interface entirely? Then just record. See, that's perfect. Then you wouldn't even need, if you're not doing vocals, you don't even need an audio interface. You could just run direct.
The only drawback is the phone out on the Katana is mono. So it's the same signal on both sides of your headphones. So for mixing, and you can't mix when your final recordings is all mono in your headphones. So you would need another interface for that, or use your built-in interface in your computer just finish your mix.
Right.
If it makes sense, I'm just trying to explain. Maybe you're better than me to explain all of it.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of companies like the Kemper. You can run direct. Okay, and I don't ever do this because I own an audio interface, so everything for me runs into the audio interface. And to be honest, it works really great to do that. Like you could take your Katana and run it in there, or whatever it might be. And because I'm always running a vocal as well, so right up here. I've got a microphone that I'm running as well, and then my audio interface has a few different inputs because I like to be able to run my Black Spirit in and my Kemper in, and I run different things. So again, when I feel inspired, I don't have to run cables and set levels. I can sit down and go, today I want to use my Hughes and Kettner, or today I want to use this, or whatever it might be. But you're right. So a lot of these amps, they have a USB out that you can plug into your computer, and then your recording software will see that and use it to record, and then you don't have to use any audio interface. The Katana, I'm assuming that you can do that you can just run the USB.
You can, but it's the final output in your headphones that is mono. It's quite tricky to do your mix when
what if you've got speakers in your computer?
You could. No, this is the way to do it.
Okay, so so that's what you could do, is if you're running it, instead of plugging your headphones into the Katana and getting it mono, you could actually have speakers coming from your computer.
Well, it's not that easy, but what I do on my side, I will record everything with the Katana, monitor through my headphones. Once all my recording is done, I will switch the interface and do my final mastering and mixing in stereo using my regular interface.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, so what I do most of the time, I will recommend my members to buy a cheap barrier interface for $50. You're good. You even have sometimes two mic inputs on this one, so you can use it for vocals if you want to add vocals, or record a live drum in your room, or whatever. You can do a lot of things. and then move from there. And that $50, save on lunch money for a couple of days. And, I was saying it earlier in our interview. We live in great times. I remember when we started buying a tape, 4-track cassette. How much it was expensive back then.
And that's important for your viewers and listeners to understand, is that if you're new to this whole technology, you just have to be careful not to let it overwhelm you, because you really can get in for very inexpensive and start making some really fun stuff. When you first start getting in, it's just like, I remember hearing a story, and I'm sure it's not true, but I remember hearing a story from Paul McCartney, where he's talking about how writing good songs, he had written like 100 really crappy songs before he got to his first good song. When you start getting into home recording, don't expect what you're doing to be so great, and don't expect your first song to just be this iconic. Just learn how it works. Even if it's not very good, or it doesn't sound very good, or you gotta get in and just start getting your feet wet with how it all works. And he's absolutely right. You can do it for very little money. You just have to understand the process. Like, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm going from my guitar to an amp, and then I'm going from that amp into the audio interface, and that interface it's interfacing. It's between the amp and the computer, and it's processing that so the software and the computer understands what you're doing. And just start with something really basic like that and figure it out.
Good.
Heck, you don't even need a computer. You can do it right from an iPad. You can record directly into an iPad. You don't even need a computer.
Even your phone.
That's right. Even your phone.
Record a bunch of stuff with your phone.
That's right.
We have Lucio here. Undecided.
Oh, goodness.
I don't know that.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. The Neural DSP Quad Cortex, I checked out it now, and it's really, really, really cool. I don't think they're available yet. I don't think you can buy them yet, and if you can, it's just recently, because, the joke of NAMM is when you see it in January, you buy it in, May. But but they both work. If you were to look at, for instance, the Kemper Stage, the Quad Cortex, maybe the Axe-Fx, right? Axe-Fx has a pedal now that you can get, a floor unit that you can get. The thing about all of them is that they all, including the Katana, including anything, they all have the potential to sound amazing. All of them do.
Yeah.
The trick is which one makes the most sense for you when you look at it. Like for me, I have a buddy that has an Axe-Fx and he loves it. For me, the Axe-Fx, it looks, and this is just me, but it doesn't look like an amp to me. It's like you got to go in and there's blocks, and you got to move the blocks, and you got to learn. I'm not a programmer. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. And somebody who's watching this might think, well, that's really easy, Steve. And it might be, but it doesn't make sense to me. So the Kemper made more sense because I could just turn things up and down. If I want a little more mid, I could turn it up like an amplifier. And I'm very primitive that way. So the Quad Cortex, in my experience, which was minimal, was that it was very easy to navigate through, okay? But I think you really need to spend a little time watching some videos on each one and see which one speaks to you from the video. It may not sound great through YouTube videos or whatever, but at least you can look at it and go, okay, well, that one makes more sense to the way I think and how I would program an effect or something like that.
Good. Any gear regrets or sold, stolen, something destroyed during a tour you wish you still had?
Well, there's a few things that I've sold for sure that I would regret. There's a couple of guitars that I sold. I used to own the original Steve Vai 7-string Universe, the first one that came out on the market that started the whole 7-string craze. I sold that for the wrong reasons. And it wasn't for money. It was that because my hands are so small, I convinced myself that I couldn't learn how to play it. And there's a couple of amps that I've sold, but but not really. I mean, other than a couple of those things that I've gotten rid of, it's fine. I've never owned guitars or gear for that matter, to put in a glass case and be admired.
No.
I own them to beat on them. So they all have cracks and chips and, and when I die, I'll give them all to my kids, and they can do whatever they want with them.
Exactly.
So,
A gear is meant to be played. You know.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on this. Any special secret in your gear? You know that you always need to play the way you play, or
yeah. Well, I've always been, since I was younger, I've always played. And it's not like the Ibanez Gem is the only guitar I'm interested in. There's a million guitars out there that I would love to own if I had the money, right? But the Gem, what I loved about it was, one thing is that I love a thin neck. I got small fingers, and this is the way I've always played. So I really like a thin neck, and I like the way that the volume and tones are set up, where like a Les Paul, you've got your toggle switch up here, which is just weird to me. But the big thing is that I use EMG pickups. I've been using EMGs since the early 90s, mid 90s, somewhere around there, and I've just become accustomed to the tone. And that doesn't mean that, there's a company out there by the name of Planet Tone that I think's amazing stuff. Fishman makes amazing stuff. There's a lot of, Bare Knuckle makes a lot of great stuff. But I've always been attracted to the tone of the EMGs. It's easy for me to manipulate. And the other thing that I do is I strip out the tone control in every one of my guitars, and I put in what's called an SPC presence control that EMG makes. So every one of my guitars has the tone control removed, because I never used the tone control ever when I was a kid.
Same.
Yeah. So the SPC, what it does is it acts like a boost. So let's say I'm on a clean channel. Now it's just going to sound like it's going to sound terrible right now, but just watch what happens. Right? So if I'm on a channel and I need just a little bit of push, let's say I'm playing with a band and I'm playing through somebody else's rig, and there's not enough gain to get me to a happy place for my solo or something like that, I can turn that up. So the more I can do with my guitar and the less I have to rely on pushing buttons on my pedal board, the less I have to be in front of my pedal board. So that SPC, what it does is it gives me the availability to push my distortion up just a little bit to get me in kind of a comfortable place if I need it. And so that's something that I have in all my guitars, just kind of a safety feature in case I, again, need to jam with somebody and I'm not on my rig or something like that.
Hey, we learn something new every day. This is the first time I hear about this, so this is a great, in my list of gear to check, I will have that EMG device,
Yeah. It's a cool little thing, and I learned that a long time ago, so it's in all my guitars. Even some of my guitars that I've got that don't have tone controls, I actually have a tone control put in and then have that SPC put in. It's just, again, they're ticks of mine, you know what I mean? But it's comfortable for me, so it's something that I find necessary.
Cool. You've done a couple of gigs in your life. You travel a lot. You may have had to play with backline equipment. What do you prefer, a good amp or a good guitar?
Oh, good guitar. 1,000,000%. I need one of my guitars. I'm not one of those players that can walk in and grab any guitar off the shelf and play in my comfort zone. I can play, but it's like grabbing an acoustic. There's things I wish I could do on acoustic that I can't do that I can do on electric because my fingers aren't strong enough, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. So if I'm in a situation where I'm playing a guitar that's not comfortable for me, I can still play it, but I'm not going to be able to get to my comfort zone. So for me, 1,000,000,000%, I would rather walk in with a guitar and plug into whatever amp you give me and give me 5 minutes to tweak it a little bit, and I'm good.
I'm the same. I'd rather have a weird amp or sounding quite bad, but if my guitar is all well set up and I play, I'll feel confident. It's like having the good tools to when you're working wood or stuff.
Yeah. And that's like when you tour, oftentimes that happens.
We have John here.
Okay, John. How well do the EMGs react to rolling the volume down? Well, let me kind of show you. Okay, so like for me, because I've been using them for so long, I use them for everything from, unless my guitar doesn't have it for some specific reason, but I use it for any style. And like I was saying earlier, I don't really try and work in the blues realm where I need a Les Paul or I need a whatever, and I just play what I like. I just play what's comfortable for me. And look at me, for God's sakes. I mean, I am who I am. And so for EMGs, what if I was to go clean and I was to have my volume all the way up, it's going to be pretty brittle. So the first thing I do whenever I go clean is I drop back. Now, you never really get a real great representation over streaming and all that sort of thing, but I can clean it up really nice. And this is that kind of Dr. Z tone that I always tend to go to, but I just love, that's one of my favorite guitar tones. You see, so yeah. So I think they're really versatile. You just, if you watch me play, if you ever watch any of my videos, you're going to see I turn the toggle switch about 750 times, and I'm always rolling my volume. But that's the kind of player that I grew up being, because I didn't have a bunch of pedals and, you know, channel switching and things like that. It was all done with the guitar. So, you know, it's not that I don't have a lead channel or things like that dialed in. I do. But when I'm playing on stage and things like that, or even when I'm playing in a video, I'm not tethered to pushing buttons to change my tones. I tend to try and use my guitar for the majority of those sound changes, unless it's, you know, clean, crystal clean to a dirty. You know, there's nothing I can do about that other than adding a pedal or something.
I used to be the same. You see the Marshall in my back. I got that amp when I started playing back with bands in around 2000. And back then I had only one guitar, one pedal, and I was using that amp the same way, one channel. Even if it's a two channel, but I really like it's a DSL-50 head, and I really like the green channel on it.
Yeah.
So I would use a green channel with, let's say, mid-gain, rolling the volume for clean.
Yep.
And when I wanted more gain, just push it with my tube screamer and we had fun. And that's the way I relearned how to play, and I'm always also using my guitar volume. And I like an amp that is dynamic, you know?
Yes.
And that reacts to the way your pickups are. If you have low output pickups, the amps, you know, it won't be as reactive as if you have EMGs that are very, you know, high output and
right.
Yeah.
And you know, for me growing up when I was younger, everything was metal. Like, that's what I played. And all the players that I grew up with, from, you know, Metallica to Slayer to whoever, they all used EMGs. And what I figured out was, when I got older, it's not that I don't still love metal, because I do, but there's so many other styles of music that I love. But I just figured out through the way that I play that I can change these to find a place that feels good with the pickups that I've got in, versus, well, I'm going to try, because again, I have friends that have drawers of guitar pickups. You know, they've got like a dresser drawer that's just full of 40 different pickups. Well, I don't know how to put them in, take them out, and it's too much hassle for me. So again, I just learned to work with what I had, and I think it works pretty well.
Learning what we have as a piece of gear, I think it's very important. It's part of the learning experience of playing guitar, you know.
Yep.
I'm always comparing this to playing piano, for example. You know, if you play piano on your own piano and you go to the piano in the store, always quite similar. But playing guitar, the size of the strings, the pickups, the pedals you have, the amps,
a million things. You're right. And if you think a lot, it's even harder. Like I'm not the kind of person that worries really about gear and buying new things, and I can make whatever I've got work. But the stuff that I have is very, very, very important to me, because they really are set up for the way that I play. Where I might have a friend come over and go, "Geez, those strings are really light." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the way I play." You know.
We have a question here from John.
Any tips for worship guitarist? Well, when I played in church for many, many years, and I actually play in a very small church now, but I played in a very large church for a long time. And the way I would approach songs for church were really no different than the way I would approach songs when I would play in any of my other bands. I've never been like, oh, that guitar part and this guitar part. I just listen and I mash everything together and then figure out something that works. And when we're in rehearsals, I listen and go, okay, maybe I should stay out a little bit there, or maybe I should add a little bit more here or there. And I don't really have like the modern worship delays and reverbs and all those kind of things. I have some Strymon stuff, and believe me, I love Strymon. Like, if there was a pedal that I love, there's some Strymon stuff that I really love. But I don't make specific tones for specific styles or for specific songs. I just play what you're hearing now is what I would play on stage. That's what I do. And so for worship guitar playing, I would learn the songs, and then the most important thing is I would listen during rehearsals and go, where do I need to play a little more? Where do I need to back off a little bit? Do I need to change maybe the chord voicing a little bit to make it a little more interesting? And that's how I've always approached playing guitar, and for me, worship music really wasn't any different. It's nice to have nice lush chords. Like, I have a friend or a guy that's been learning some stuff from me, and it would be nice if maybe he would learn a few more different chord voicings and things like that, just to give him something different to, look for different, things like that. They sound really nice oftentimes. But that's, again, I know that's a very simple answer, but that's the way I kind of approach everything, because it feels honest to me, and I'm not worried about what the tab says. I'm worried about what the music sounds like when we're playing together, and then I respond to that.
Yep. I agree with you. Mm-hmm. That's the way we should approach playing music, put your passion, put your energy into it, make it sound the way you feel it.
Mm-hmm. For most of the bands that... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
For many of the bands that I've played in over the years, it's been 3-piece bands. Or it might be 4-piece with a singer, but you're the only guitar player. So oftentimes, you have to make different arrangements to songs that you're going to play because there isn't 2 different guitar players. So you listen to a song, and then you kind of figure out what is most needed in this song for the audience to enjoy the experience of whatever band you're playing it. So, where a lot of times, again, I've never been where there's, 2 guitar players and that person does that and you do this, and it's, and if I'm in a guitar band with two players, we certainly talk about things, but for the most part, I'm the only guitar player, so I've always just tried to approach it from what does the song need most, and how can I give that song? And for me, worship music is the same. I'm sorry I didn't even see that post.
Okay, sorry. It's all right. Okay. Just a count to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very nice of you.
Okay. I asked that question to all my guests. You're stuck on the desert island. A Les Paul or a Strat?
Oh, Strat, for sure.
Really?
Oh, 1,000,000%. More comfortable. It's more... Les Paul, I wish I was a Les Paul player, but I'm not. They're too heavy. They sit back here like this. Again, everything's in the wrong place for me. The neck is too clunky. And again, I don't want any hate mail for it, because if you can play it, I envy you for playing a Les Paul, because I think they're amazing. But for me, they're just, everything about them is wrong. Where a Strat is closer to a comfort place for me, for sure.
And it's funny, Steve. I always been a super Strat player since day one. Whoops. Sorry.
That's okay.
And 2 years ago, I bought my first Les Paul.
Yeah, how was it?
Cheap model. It's a tribute.
Okay.
It's their cheapest of the line. It's made in USA, but the cheapest. And it became my favorite guitar. I don't know why.
Right? Is that? Well, listen, I the same thing could happen to me too. I have owned a couple of Les Pauls before, and I have played them on stage, but you know what it's like. Like, if you're on stage and you're playing a particular guitar, you know it's temporary. You're only going to be using it for a little while. So for me, that's the thing about a Les Paul, is that I can get through a song or two, but I feel a little out of my element. But man, I love them. I love the way they look. They're just so rock and roll.
Here it is.
Yeah,
It's not the top of the line model, very cheap. One piece of wood. Neck is not finished in the back, or not much. It's a light finish.
Right.
And it's a gold top. I always loved gold top. So I got this one, and it sounds great, and it sustains for days. You hit the chord, it's like kind of pop. In the Marshall in the back, wow.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and that's the thing is, there's no doubt that there's a tried and true to great gear. And again, it doesn't have to be expensive like you just said. But I'm hampered by my size and my history, right? Because who knows, had I bought a Strat, a 22 or 21 fret Strat when I was a kid, or had I had my first guitar been a Les Paul instead of an Ibanez Gem, the story would be entirely different. But that's just the way things turned out. And so for me, what I always try and, hey, thanks, John. What I always try and tell people is, the less you worry about everybody else's journey, whether it's gear, whether it's lessons, whether it's the style of music you listen to, the less you worry about everybody else, the more you're going to enjoy your journey, because it's your journey. You're here on this planet for a limited amount of time. Don't
trust me, time flies.
It does. And don't make it a pain in the ass. Like, don't make the whole thing an entire struggle so you never enjoy any of it. Like, just find your space. I was just reading this wonderful article where Steve I was talking about this exact thing, where, people are so hung up on what everybody else is doing that they forget to figure out what they're doing. And that's half of what I've always tried to do in my lessons, is to get people to understand that that's really what it's all about. I don't care how fast you are. I don't care how many scales you know. I don't care what gear you use. I just want you to have a smile on your face every once in a while when you're playing. And that's really what it's about.
This is what is important.
That's right.
And this is something I noticed with my group, with close to 13,000 members. I'm surprised at how much guitar player overthink.
Yeah.
They overthink everything.
Yep.
Even they ask questions about the knob on the M, and I'm like, why do you care about that?
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this, though. If for some reason those questions make you happy, then ask them. I mean, if that's...
I understand. And I don't want to get flamed today, but enjoy twisting the knob. Understand what it does. Feel it when you play with your guitar. And
that's right.
Stop overthinking.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this to that, because you're absolutely right. There are... I always use the going to the bar and having drinks with a friend thing, where when you go to the bar and you have a bunch of drinks with a friend, if you do that, every once in a while you can get to a place where you've had a few too many drinks and now you're solving all the world's problems together, right? And you wake up the next day and you got a headache and you're like, what the heck happened? It's okay to get that way once in a while, but if your life in terms of guitar is always that, like I meet people all the time that get way too deep into theory, when I'm like, it's okay for you to be asking these questions, it's fine. Mm-hmm. But what I'm most concerned with is when your fingers hit the fretboard, are you playing something that sounds good to you, or maybe even sounds good to somebody else? I don't care that you can define to me what a Phrygian dominant scale is. I think that's wonderful. But what I'm most concerned with is, can you get your fingers on the guitar and play something that makes you happy and makes somebody else happy? It's more important than the words that we use.
Yeah. Good point from that viewer right now.
Finding your voice on an instrument is a lifelong journey. Takes a ton of oh gosh, boy, isn't that the truth? I always tell people, like, one of my favorite players, and I've got a million of them, but one of my favorite players is a gentleman by the name of Tommy Emmanuel. He's an acoustic guitar player. I love Tommy's playing. I will never be Tommy. And I'm too far in my own journey to try and all of a sudden become Tommy, right? But I can enjoy him, and I can be inspired by him. Kind of like I told you the Kiss story, same thing. I'm going to enjoy Tommy from afar and keep being on the journey that I'm on.
I had a question, but I won't. I already know your answer. You're more of a distortion guy than a clean guy, if I understand.
Well, I like
or a light crunch?
When I'm jamming, it depends.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I like it clean. Sometimes I think I will always like a little bit of crunch in there versus like crystal clean, because being an EMG guy, my world has never really been a crystal clean kind of world, really. But it doesn't always have to be a lot of distortion. It just, some days I feel more aggressive and more metal. And some days I'm kind of just, I can sit for 2-3 hours and just noodle clean. Well, relatively clean.
Yeah. Well, we need some dirt in our life.
Yeah.
You can go back in time and meet young Steve. Any advice for him?
Boy, that's a really good question. No, I don't think so. I think, and again, I hate to be that guy. I hate to be the Bob Ross of guitar playing, but I'm very, very, very blessed to be where I'm at right now. If I changed anything, I think I wouldn't wind up where I'm at. And, I guess I would stress a little, I would worry a little less about the small things. I would worry a little less about the particulars. My wife and I, we've been married for 12 years now. Back in the early days, we almost weren't together anymore because I was so busy with my life and practice that I never had time for her, never had time for my kids when I was younger. And I regret that.
Okay.
But I think if I hadn't done that, we wouldn't be where we are now. So I don't think I would change anything.
Listen to Christopher here.
Oh boy, thank you, Christopher. That's awfully nice. Thank you. That's awfully nice of you.
If I could go back in time, I would tell myself to practice more. I was more of a noodling kind of guy, learning riffs, never ending, never learning a song completely. And when I bought my first 4-track tape, 4-track recorder, I was spending most of my time composing, recording stuff, but never concentrating on having a good playing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And composing and recording takes time, so all my spare time was spent.
That's the hard part, is that every little thing takes time, and there's only so much time you have. I mean, I could say even now, I wish I had more time to do more of my own writing and my own recording, but it's hard to find, and I'm not making an excuse. It's hard to find that time and give up time on the other things because of this world that I've built and what I do. But I can say that, and then on the other side of my mouth, I'm saying, I get to do what I do.
Hey, another good comment from John.
Oh boy, thank you. Love your videos with Lainey. I tell you, and that's something right there. Lainey's my 19-year-old daughter, and Lainey and I have made music. We've played. We've done performances together. She's in college right now, and we don't get to do much for performances. But that right there is me playing acoustic, playing simple chords, and she sings. And I'm not all over the fretboard and doing all kinds of theory, and I am perfectly happy just being her guitar player. Instead of it being Lainey's or Steve's daughter, it's Lainey's dad, right? And I'm completely proud of that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Great. Who can have the opportunity to sit down with dead or alive, an artist or a musician? Who would you like to talk to?
That's a good one too. Probably maybe Joe Satriani. Yeah. But I have gotten to talk to some of these guys that I always dreamed that I could talk to. And the one thing I do like to talk to anybody about, and even if there was somebody that I could go back, maybe Randy Rhoads.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's their process. Like, what I love to talk to guitar players about is not so much a technique as much as what were you thinking when you came up with that? Like, when you recorded that solo, how were you thinking? And that's information I can use more than when I was younger. It was all about technique. Like, how do you play that lick? Now I'm less worried about that and more like, what were you thinking when you played that or when you came up with that?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Today I'm having a very good moment with you. This is awesome. So all my guests I've been so generous, and with their replies and everything. I feel privileged right now with that humble show I'm doing. So thank you very much to be part of it.
Absolutely.
You had great success with your YouTube channel right now. This is impressive. I think you're close to 500,000 members right now, or subscribers.
On one channel, I have 3 different channels, but
Yep. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Do you think about it, or?
Well, I've lived my life making music on multiple levels, whether it's with the guitar, whether it's teaching, whether it's Montessori, whether it's the college, whatever it is. And I've never really stopped to think about it not working out. So in 10 years, I guess I would still love to be doing this, but I would love to be, what I love the most is not just playing. What I love the most is when people get the light bulb to go off in their head. And so being able to travel around more and talk to people personally and talk about what they're going through and what they're doing and, things I could do to help them or ideas or tips that I have. I would love to do more of that. I would love to be able to do more, whether you call them guitar clinics or seminars or whatever. I would love to be able to do more of that kind of stuff. Where I actually get to talk to people. Yeah.
And as you're deep into the YouTube thing, and you see all of this, I saw your friend with a few other big YouTubers out there, and what will be the next big thing in the coming 10 years? I would say the past 10 years have been the evolution of guitar modeling, and YouTube also has evolved into an interesting platform to share knowledge and lessons like you do. So do you have an idea where we are heading?
Well, it's hard to say because you're absolutely right. Like, the day of the Guitar Hero, of the Randy Rhoads whatever, has kind of changed, right? I mean, now you've got YouTubers that are, and again, I'm not saying that they're whatever, but they're popular. People know who they are or whatever it might be. So that's kind of weird. Like, back in the day, to get endorsements, you had to play so many dates, so many dates a year to get an Ibanez endorsement or whatever it might be. And now it has nothing to do with that. Now it's how many views you get or, what kind of social presence you have. And so, and you're right with gear. Like, gear keeps getting, and I think that's kind of one of the things is gear just keeps getting smaller and smaller. Eventually, we're just going to have a thing that goes in our pocket that we can take everywhere, and it has all the guitar tones we'd ever want, and we plug it into whatever, and we're done. And that one thing will do all of our audio interface stuff, and it'll do whatever we need on live, and it'll literally be as big as in the palm of our hand is all we'll, like our phones,
Yeah. But do you feel or see something that will kind of be huge coming soon, or no?
I to be honest, I don't really pay that much attention. I mean, the biggest thing, like you just said, was this modeling thing that's happening right now, which has been happening. You mentioned the pod, the Line 6. It's been happening for years, but they finally gotten to a place where it's legitimate and people are using it because it sounds good, and they're also using it, professional bands, because it's convenient. Because you can go from a Fender to a Marshall to a Boogie to a whatever, all with a click of a button and with your foot. I can't imagine how much easier things are going to get from here, because it's almost ridiculously easy at this point. Maybe virtual guitar lessons, maybe having a 3D, thing of somebody like back in the Jetsons or something that pops up on your, in your house, maybe something like that. But gosh, I don't know.
I would have Steve just behind me and showing me that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Hey, thank you very much. I feel very privileged to have you on my show today. Sorry to my viewers about the echo thing. I have the same setup than my last one. And I don't know why right now I'm having that issue, so sorry for that problem, but thank you again. And if you want to finish the show with having maybe a few little licks or riffs for my viewers, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
See you, everybody. Take care.
Bon, c'est fini. Aïe, aïe, aïe. Bon. Sinon, je vais lui donner la place.